Hello YouTube. Yes, as the title of this video reveals, this morning I woke up from an earthquake. But actually that's a bit of a lie, because I didn't wake up from the earthquake. I woke up like 5 seconds before the earthquake, when there was this alarm sounding in our house. Like most modern Japanese houses, there's an earthquake security system, so whenever it detects an earthquake, then this alarm is triggered, and lets us know that there will be some tremors coming very soon. So yeah, I think this time it went off a few seconds before the shaking started, and this was 4:45 in the morning. So I was deep asleep when it happened, but of course it woke me up, and I recognized that it is actually shaking, and it's pretty stronger than average-ish kind of earthquake. But eventually it stopped, and I think within half a minute I was asleep again. That's one thing that happens when you live in Japan. You get used to earthquakes because they happen very frequently here. But before I came to Japan, this whole earthquake thing was actually something that really, really freaked me out, and it was something that made me reconsider, like, should I really move to Japan, or should I stay in a country where the ground is a little bit more stable? I remember I was talking to a Swedish friend about this, and she had just visited Japan. This was before I had ever set my foot here, and she told me that she was actually wearing a helmet all the time when she was riding the subway, because she was so afraid of a big earthquake happening, and that she would hit her head. So at that time I was seriously thinking maybe I should do that too, and then I will be fine. But knowing what I know today, that whole that whole idea of wearing a helmet every time I take the subway feels really, really ridiculous. And also because actually the subway system is supposed to be built to extremely high earthquake resistance standards, so it's actually supposed to be one of the safer places you can be if there's a big earthquake happening here. But in general, most things here in Japan is built to withstand really, really strong earthquakes. So if we take this one, for example, that happened this morning, it was a magnitude 6.2 earthquake, and that's kind of strong. Like, if an earthquake like that happens in many other countries that are less prepared than Japan, it would cause some serious damage, like buildings could collapse, and even people could die from this. But here in Japan, it didn't, as far as I know, this earthquake didn't cause any damage at all, and there has been no reports about anything whatsoever in terms of damage or damages. But yeah, for the first few years when I came to Japan, I was still really, really afraid of earthquakes, and every time they happened, it was like a feeling of excitement and fear at the same time. Like, first you notice that, it's shaking, this is so weird and exotic, and I never really got used to earthquakes back then, because we don't have any in Sweden at all. But then once the shaking continues for a while, you also realize, is this gonna be stronger? Is this gonna be the big one that actually could end up killing me and destroying Tokyo, or is this just another one of the small ones? Because a big one is supposed to hit Tokyo sometime soon, according to most experts. Like, statistically, I think Tokyo is 30 years overdue. So there's been big earthquake devastating this city many times throughout history. The last one was in the beginning of last century, so 20th century. The big Kanto earthquake, which ended up killing, I think, 100,000 or so people. But since then, there hasn't really been that many major serious earthquakes hitting the Tokyo area. The biggest one was the 2011 earthquake and tsunami up in Tohoku. That earthquake was also felt here in Tokyo. And I think it's still the strongest earthquake I've ever experienced, even though Tokyo is pretty far from its epicenter. So the areas that's closer to where it actually happened, the shaking there was much stronger than here in Tokyo. But still, it was a pretty scary experience. Actually, that day I was still a language student, and that day ended up becoming my last day in language school. I think I touched on this in a previous video, but I just got so much work after that earthquake, and I was pretty tired from studying Japanese language for a year, so I decided to focus on work for a while instead. But yeah, that day when it happened, I had just finished school, and I was at a cafe having some snack and doing some homework, and it suddenly started shaking, and the shaking got stronger and stronger, and at one point I noticed that people around me started panicking and screaming and running out on the street, and at that point that's when I realized that, oh, this is actually not good. I should probably not be inside this old house. So I ran out on the street, just like most people around me, but this was in Shinjuku, and for those of you who know Shinjuku, you know that there's a lot of narrow streets, and that most buildings there are full of signboards and advertisements. And as soon as I got outside, I realized that, oh, these signs and everything is shaking really violently. That's probably why Japanese people are being told to stay inside when an earthquake happens, because it's much more likely that a sign or something will come falling down from a building than that the actual building will collapse. But by the time I was clear enough in my mind to realize that the shaking had already stopped. I just got in touch with all the near and dear ones and told them that I was okay, and made sure that they were okay too. And then I got extremely busy, and I think I was working for like 12 hours straight or something like that, doing radio interviews and writing articles about the situation here in Japan. Because I think that I'm the only Swedish journalist who was experiencing it on like here in Japan, but I'm not 100% sure. But anyway, there's not that many of us, so yeah, I was in high demand there for a while. And a few weeks after the earthquake, I finally managed to go up to the affected area myself, and that was really an eye-opening experience. Like, that was the first time I was actually seeing with my own eyes how devastating these natural disasters can be. And I remember we were driving along the coast for probably for hours, and it was just rubble and devastation everywhere. Then you could really take in the scale of how horrible this disaster was. But staying up there, I spent one night together with a family who had just this was a while after the disaster happened, so there was a few of these temporary houses already being built, and I was spending one night with a family who were living in one of these temporary houses, and it was a really how should I say, really special experience. They were, they had lost everything, their house, everything they owned, and they were living in this tiny little, very makeshift kind of container-like building, but still they were so friendly to me. And I remember the old the old grandma in the house, she fried me some sausages for the breakfast because she you know, I was Westerner and she assumed that I couldn't eat traditional Japanese breakfast, which is rice and fish. So she made me scrambled eggs and fried sausages. But yeah, that earthquake that happened in 2011, and so it's almost next year. It will be 10 years since it happened, and I'm actually planning to go up there again on the 10-year anniversary to see how things are like right now, because from what I've heard, I haven't really stayed up to date with this issue much in the last few years, because it's generally not really talked much about here in Japan. But I think a lot of people still actually live in these temporary houses and are waiting for their compensation from the government. At least that was the case when I last went up there, which was 5 years after the earthquake happened. Then there was still so much work left to be done, and I would be surprised if the situation has improved dramatically since then. So that will be a very interesting experience. But to get back to life here in Tokyo and how earthquakes affect us, it's just, you know, it's something that you have to learn to live with, and earthquakes do happen, but most of them don't cause much damage. The buildings here are so well built that they can take quite a beating. But in the last couple of months, there's actually been it feels like there's been more and more earthquakes in the Tokyo area. Not in Tokyo proper, but quite near to Tokyo, and it is a little bit worrisome, because that could be signs that there's a bigger one happening. So it is a little bit of a worry right now. But at the same time, these things are so extremely unpredictable, and not even the scientists can tell when it's going to happen. So I've chosen to live here, and that means that I've chosen to accept the risk of a big earthquake happening. And for the most part, I do feel very safe here. I do. And I mean, there's risks everywhere, right? And I think the biggest risk in your life, if you live in Tokyo, is that an earthquake will happen. But except the earthquakes, this country is so extremely safe in every other way, and I think I'd rather take the risk of having a big earthquake happening than the risk of getting robbed or involved in a fight, or all those stupid things that happens in most Western countries all the time. So it's just part of life. But I think that's all for now, and I am getting so much feedback on these videos, and that's really amazing, and I'm really grateful for every comment that I get. And if you are listening to this and you feel that you want to help out this channel and support me, writing a comment is a good way, because writing comments means that Google's algorithm will see that this video has some activity, and that means that it is more likely to show my videos to other people interested in these topics. So that's a good way to support me. So just write a comment, or you can just press the like button if you have nothing to say. And as you know, I'm very active in the comment section, so I try to respond to as many questions as I can. And if you have any topic that you want me to talk more about, please let me know, and I might very well bring it up in a future video. But that's all for now. Thank you so much, and I'll talk to you all again soon. Bye.